am not here. I'm really not here to hurt your feelings, but I am here to finally say some things out loud that some of us have only dared to whisper in private. So here it goes. Brace yourself. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., he's not the hero that we were told that he was, and Donald Trump was right to remove his likeness out of the Oval Office. Whew. There it is. I said it, got it off my chest. So they said he removed it because he's racist. His critics are saying, well, this is an insult to the civil rights movement. They said, see, this is proof that Donald Trump hates black people. What else do you need to see? Well, what if the real insult was placing the bust of MLK in the Oval Office in the first place? What if that is the insult? I know that is a pearl-clutching, culturally heretical statement that you're not supposed to say. I know you're wondering, April, why would you say that? Well, first of all, calm down, right? Calm down, hold your horses. We're going to talk about all of it and more coming up next on Unshakable with April Chapman. Welcome back to Unshakable with April Chapman, where we discuss all things social, cultural, political, and theological from a biblical perspective. I am your host, April Chapman, and on today's episode, it is going to rustle some feathers and cause some of y'all gonna crash out and start tweaking. I already know that that's going to happen, but I am willing to take that risk for the sake of the truth. So it's kind of like that one time. My mama told me that I was getting fat. She looked at me and she said, "Ooh, your knees are spreading. Like you picking up some weight." And she didn't hold back. I mean, she didn't even give me a heads up. So, so I could at least brace myself for the impact. She just came right on out and said it. Well, the truth has a way of doing that to you sometimes. So here's the story. On June 17th, 2025, President Donald J. Trump quietly removed the bust of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. from the Oval Office. He didn't throw a press conference. He didn't hold a ceremony. He just simply moved the bust into the private dining room. And in exchange, he put Winston Churchill back where it used to be. Now, a few people, not a lot, they lost their ever-loving minds. And listen, I get it. If this was 10 years ago and you had told me that President Trump had did something like this, I would have been outraged, okay? Like I would be, yes, ignorantly talking out the side of my neck. I'd have been all over social media cutting a straight fool because like most people, I too was conditioned to believe the shareable narrative surrounding Martin Luther King Jr. and his civil rights work. It is what it is. But before I learned the truth about who MLK was, what he actually accomplished, and what he actually believed, the symbolism of MLK, to me, that equated to substance. That was all I needed. And like many people on the left, I would have ignored what he actually was advocating for. Forget the policies, forget the results. If you remove a statue, you are now racist. Case closed, end of discussion, especially if you are white. So let me break it all down for you. The knee-jerk reaction from legacy media and the liberal talking heads, it was predictable, okay? Removing the bust of Martin Luther King Jr. from the Oval Office, they're going to say it's rooted in racism, right? Like to them, racism is the only possible explanation, and it's the only time that they believe that something is binary, right? Now, gender being binary or marriage between a man and a woman being binary, no, they can't think in that kind of category. They are unable to see or comprehend in any sense that those two things are binary. But a white person not celebrating or idolizing a black person that we were told was all worth celebrating, the only possible reason must be because of racism. I can hear the screams now. This is erasure, right? This is anti-black. But here's my question. Since when is it racist to remove a man, not because of his skin color, but because of his worldview? What a thought. How novel is that? Here's the reality that we just all need to grapple with. MLK's ethnicity was not, and will never be the problem. That's never been the issue. The problem with MLK has always been his ideology. It's been his ideology, his worldview, and the destructive fruit of his so-called dream, right? And not only that, for the Bible believing Christian, King's theology, that is a super big problem. We're now 60 years removed from his movement, and look at the results. What do we see? We have out of wedlock birth rates in the Black community. It skyrocketed from a 25% in 1965 to nearly over 70% today. That is a big issue. We have welfare dependency that grew, not because of opportunity, but because of grievance politics, right? You got the grievance politics, violent crime surged, family, the whole family structure fractured, respect for moral authority has been eroded. These are the fruits. This is the legacy. Is that the legacy that we're actually protecting? I hope not, because from my vantage point, when I look at us and we're at the bottom of every socioeconomic statistic that can be measured, and we can trace a direct line to the advocacy and the worldview and the civil rights struggle that originated with Martin Luther King Jr. So if any part of this conversation is just making you super uncomfortable, making your jaw hit the floor, just wait. Brace yourself, because I've already exposed a lot of this before, and I can't really go back and re-adjudicate this, but this is not new. If you are interested in going deeper into how I feel about MLK and the truth about him and the real deal, what you need to do is you need to go back and check out, I've done so much content on this. I've done a video on Julia Brown, who is the FBI informant who blew the whistle on King's communist ties. This woman, Black woman, by the way, risked it all to speak the truth, and basically history buried her along with her memory. Now, while we're also busting some myths, I want you to go. I've also done an episode on the truth about the Montgomery bus boycott, because despite what your sixth grade social studies teacher tried to tell you, it was not Rosa Parks and a boycott that desegregated buses in the South. The truth is, it was a Supreme Court case, Browder versus Gale, that actually did the job. The boycott was symbolic, kind of like the bus in the White House, in the Oval Office. But the court actually is what did the work. So if you are ready to break free from all the fairy tales that they taught you in public school, I need you to hit pause, go search and add those videos to your watch list, or better yet, I'm going to link them above, and then you can come back when you're ready for more. Because here on this channel, my entire goal, my job is to deal in the facts and not the feeling. So go ahead and do that, and let's go on ahead and get back to the video. Here's the truth. Here's the truth about King. Let's just stop pretending that we actually don't know the truth. First of all, we have the King FBI files. We have that. We have the testimonies of people from in and out of his camp, right? So you've got corroboration from foes and friends alike. We have the tapes, albeit they are sealed until next year, 2027, but we have the truth. We even know that J. Edgar Hoover, yes, the Hoover that people are trying to paint him as some irrational bigot foaming at the mouth when it came to MLK, but it was bigger than that. He saw the dangers of King's ties to communists. He saw the plagiarism, and he had first row seats, right, to the moral failings and his apostate theology that denied key doctrines of the Christian faith. And so people are saying, but Hoover was a racist. Okay, I disagree. No, Hoover was not afraid of Martin Luther King Jr.'s skin tone. Okay, it wasn't his skin tone. He was afraid of King's influence. Why? The wicked alliances that King had and the implications thereof was the problem. But let's just go. Let's go with the racist narrative for a second, and we can leave that on the table because it makes you feel better. So for some people, they need the racism, the race card being on the table to help them cope with the cognitive dissonance. Even if you leave that element in, can we at least judge the cultural wreckage that we're living in today and see that Hoover had every right to be concerned? It's something to think about. So This situation is more about the tales of two men. You have Winston Churchill versus Martin Luther King Jr. That is the issue at hand. That's what this video is supposed to be about. So let's actually talk about how Donald Trump took the bust of MLK Jr. out of the Oval Office and replaced it with Winston Churchill. It comes down to the tales of these two men. You have one man that led the charge against actual fascism and defended Western civilization from Nazi tyranny. And then you have the other one. Well, he partnered with Marxists and spiritualized socialism, so much so that most people alive today, they actually think that socialism is good and they embrace it wholeheartedly, right? Then you have one upheld the dignity of the nation, this nation, America. Then the other one undermined the structure of the family. Y'all, this is not a skin tone issue. This is an issue of legacy, a worldview issue, an issue of results. Churchill's leadership saved the continent. King's activism, on the other hand, it helped usher in a culture of grievance and dependency and a whole lot of moral decay. And all I'm saying is, let's judge and look at the results. So why does this matter? I get it. For many Black Americans, y'all, seeing the bust or hearing about the bust of MLK being removed from the Oval Office, that hits deep. It really cuts deep for some of them. And it's because we've been conditioned. Yes, conditioned. That is the proper word. We've been conditioned to believe that any challenge to the civil rights mythology, that is a personal attack on us. Like, we take it personal. Even if there are people that I know who are listening to the words coming out of my mouth right now because they are struggling because they've never had their worldview on this issue challenged. And so they're either doing one or two things. They're either tuning out or they're unsubscribing. And I'm okay with that. But I am telling you, that is the trap right there. The trap is that they want you to have cognitive dissonance. They want you to just disassociate yourself, plug up your ears to the truth. They don't want you to think about what I'm saying and the plausibility of it being true. They want you to think that an attack on King is an attack on you. That is what they want you to believe. Hear me clearly. One, you are not Martin Luther King Jr. Okay, your worth is not tied to a statue. Two, your dignity doesn't depend on a symbolic token in the Oval Office. If it does, help you because you got bigger problems than his bust being removed from an office that you've never even been in. They propped it up. He has been propped up to make you believe a lie. We don't need cultural idols. Why? Because we got too many of those as it is to begin with. And a cultural idol leads us straight to the bottom of everything. That's where it's led us. We're at the bottom of every socioeconomic category that can be measured, right? What we need is moral clarity and to be led by the Spirit of God and not the spirit of Gandhi. I no longer am willing to tiptoe around the truth. I'm not going to whisper. They want me to whisper, but I'm not whispering anymore. They want me to stay quiet. I cannot. They want me to just smile and nod and pretend like King's legacy is just untouchable. And no, you can't say that. Well, you got the wrong one. I'm not that person. And I'm not going to act like that is okay. Why? Because the fruit of King and that movement, it speaks for itself. I don't have to trash his legacy. It's already trashed on its own merit. The fruit, it speaks for itself. The results, I'm sorry, they are undeniable. And if telling you the truth, if that makes you uncomfortable, maybe you too. Maybe you've been too comfortable with the lie. There's this quote that I heard Frederick Douglass say once that I want to read to you. And it is just so incredibly powerful. It says right here that a man without force is without the essential dignity of humanity. Human nature is so constituted that it cannot honor a helpless man, although it can pity him. And even this, it cannot do long if the signs of power do not arise. I said, listen, I am arguing that MLK's legacy did not empower Black America. In fact, it weakened us, made us incredibly weak, because the dignity that our predecessors wanted, that should have come from strength and self-determination, not from eliciting pity or appearing helpless. Grievance politics and symbolic victimhood, yes, that is a surefire way of having people look at you with disdain and pity. And that's exactly what has happened. Frederick Douglass is saying in this quote that, listen, even pity eventually is going to wear off. And we've seen exactly that. 60 years later, the civil rights movement has turned into a perpetual grievance industry that has lost all moral weight over time, not because people stopped caring, but because it didn't produce dignity. It produced no dignity. It has not made us any more independent, and we're definitely not stronger. Right? First of all, laying down on a bridge, getting beat up after you've picked and instigated the fight, begging other image bearers to sit next to them. Instead, we could have been showing them that, listen, we don't really give a darn about what you think about us. And if you want to have your whites only spaces, fine. We're going to be over here producing and innovating. And that is how we would have earned their respect. But the inverse of asking for the government to give you basic income instead of you telling the government to get the heck out of your way, that is how you earn what you believe you deserve. Frederick Douglass, in that quote, he is proving the contrast of King's results with Winston Churchill's results, right? Winston Churchill, he fought tyranny, rallied a whole nation under fire. King, by contrast, leads a movement that increasingly taught people to seek validation from the government, beg the government, get symbolic appeasement. Instead of transformation through truth and responsibility, I can guarantee you that Frederick Douglass, every day and twice on Sunday, would have had far more admiration for Winston Churchill than MLK. That's just a fact. The truth is that the Black community needs power rooted in responsibility, not symbolism rooted in perpetual grievance. True dignity doesn't come from being pitied, which is what we saw happen in the civil rights movement. The legacy of MLK's blatant Marxist activism, which is anti-God and anti-Christian, it yielded a bunch of pity and created an entire generation of melanated Marxist-minded Negroes. I will say it until I'm blue in the face, and you know I'm right. Because if you look at Raphael Warnock, Jamal Bryant, Freddie Hayes, Jasmine Crockett, Maxine Waters, what's the dude up in Brandon Johnson? All of them are melanated, Marxist-minded Negroes who've done nothing to improve the lives of the constituents that they represent or the Black people that they claim to love. And you may not want to hear it, but Trump did what few had the guts to do, and that is he told the truth without saying a word. He removed it, moved the bus, and in doing so, he removed the mask without saying a word. And this is why I'm the executive producer of the critically acclaimed film, MLK Motives Unmasked. Because this film, set to come out in September, I'm telling you, it is going to change your life. Chad O. Jackson, he has written and directed and starred in it, and the big homie, Vince Everett Ellison, is in it. So is Chuck Littleton. These men, I am so proud of the work that these men are doing, because one, it's going to wake up an entire generation, and it is going to pull back the Band-Aid and just let the truth be told. And I am a firm believer that it is the Lord's work that these men are doing. So I want you to stay tuned for more information on that. When the film has its release date, you're going to be the first ones to know. Like I said, I'm executive producer, and I am just excited for this project. But I'm curious to know, what are your thoughts on this issue right here? Are you tired of symbolism without substance? Are you ready to stand firm in the truth, or are you still clinging to the falsehood that Martin Luther King was this good dude that deserves our admiration despite the outcomes? Like, look at the outcomes. Despite the results, should his butt still stay in the Oval Office? Or should we just turn our heads away from the reality of the psyop known as MLK. Whichever one it is that you believe, I am curious to know what you think. I say, hey, sound off in the comments, because listen, we don't bow to statues, especially the ones built on a lie. So I'm curious to know what you think. Leave me a comment down in the box below. And until next time, you guys, stay bold, stay rooted, and above all else, stay unshakable. Grace and peace.